least in this short sample range. So maybe they will be doing something interesting down the road. Okay, so we did that, and we can say that for these 4, not much can be said. But for 5, the remaining 5, they exhibit what I would call antagonistic questioning. So in other words, if you count up the questions that they ask, whatever side they're going to vote for, that's the side they're going to ask fewer questions of. And this is generally true. And it sort of makes sense, right? If someone stands up in front of you and is espousing a position that you disagree with, you might tend to kind of get into it with them. And if somebody's just saying stuff you totally agree with, you might kind of let them off the hook and not bother them so much. So here they are in order of strength of correlation. Justice Scalia is, sort of pegging the meter over at, if he doesn't agree with you, he's just going to be on your case at oral argument. And then all the way to at the other end of the spectrum, Justice Roberts is, raising the needle somewhat, but isn't a strongly predictive questioner. So the next question is, okay, so who could use this? Who might this be good for? Well, the first answer is law school nerds who are trying to write papers for their Supreme Court seminar class. And pundits maybe. This might be, I don't think this is any substitute for actually, knowing stuff. But when you're totally on the fence about what's going on, this might be an interesting thing to supplement with. So that's one thing one community who could use it. But also litigants who are in suspense after their oral arguments take place. Some of these people own companies who have been sued, and they might like to insulate themselves from the upcoming ruling, and if they could know or have some hint about what it is, they could take a position that might help them a little bit. Also, can we think of any cities where you could make a bet on the outcome of an upcoming important event? So you could just, literally wager money on it, see what the over-under is on the upcoming case docket. And this is where I'm really headed, is actual investors. So suppose you had prior knowledge that the Walmart class action suit would not be allowed to go forward. So Walmart stock is maybe going to take a bump rather than a hit when that's announced. Or maybe the suit to strike down the California law barring the direct marketing of violent video games to minors. If you knew what the outcome of that was going to be, you might be able to make some fairly strategic investments because these involve large publicly traded companies. And that's sort of the inspirational thing about them. This isn't a foolproof method by a long shot. This is really only the most superficial kind of analysis that we could be doing. And everyone that I tell about this will hit me with like a bunch of other things. Hey, have you thought about doing this or that thing? And the answer is, well, I thought about it maybe a little. I didn't have time. This is very interesting. But a couple of points, even before thinking about doing more sophisticated analysis, even at this level, the court just tends to rule in favor of petitioners. It's about a 55-45 split there. And that kind of stands to reason too, because why would you grant certiorari to someone who's petitioning you? Why would you agree to hear the case of someone who you didn't think had a point? So if the Supreme Court's going to take a case, they probably think there's at least some merit to it. The other thing that's interesting is there are very strong groupings of outcomes. The court favors certain split patterns. So in criminal cases, you see a huge number of unanimous decisions. And you still, even in civil cases, will see 9-0 or 8-0 a lot of the time. And then the other sort of biggie is 5-4. You see a lot of those splits nowadays. But the biggest challenge for us as people who would like to get rich off of this technique is the fact that we don't know in advance when a decision is going to be released. So we know when oral arguments are held, and we know that the decision will come sometime after that, but we can't say with any kind of precision when that's going to be. And that is frustrating because if you want to buy a stock option, the load that you pay on that option is tied directly to the duration of the option. So in other words, if you could predict it in a narrow time window, you could do a lot better on your option. You'd spend a lot less on the option itself. So talking with people who are smarter than I am about finance, the guidance that I got is that this is not the sort of thing that you'd, even if you had really good information, even if this were a pretty ironclad method of predicting outcomes, you probably wouldn't want to do something like start a hedge fund that does only this, because the number of cases that and therefore the number of trades that you'd be making is pretty small. It's maybe 5 or 10 per term, and that's not how those funds like to work. The better plan would be to get a small cadre of investors, 4 or 5 of them, who have some money that they're not too risk averse about, and make some small investments based on that, and you can get a fair amount of leverage with options, more than just buying the stock. In fact, that's why when you see an insider trader case, the way the SEC caught those people is they purchased large blocks of options. It's never that they bought the stock itself, because they can get so much more mileage out of an option vehicle. All right, so kind of starting to wrap up here. Again, this is no substitute for actually knowing stuff. I don't recommend disregarding traditional methods of insight about the Supreme Court. But like I said, if you were at a point where you were just trying to make a guess and you'd sort of exhausted your other sources of knowledge, this might be an interesting supplement to it. And it's kind of fun to be able to make somewhat sophisticated judgments with absolutely no legal training whatsoever. And that's pretty much what I came to say. So like I said, this isn't a major computer security issue or anything like that. It's a footnote, but it's kind of a fun one. And the other thing that I would like to mention is, I don't know, some people in the room will know who Foofus.net is. We are hiring. If you are a software developer with hacking interest, we would love to talk to you. So drop an email, and we'd love to see about your resume. I am going to be over, at least briefly, in the Q&A area after this, but no one is actually yanking me off the stage now. Oh, or are you? Okay, so I will be over in the Q&A area shortly. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of the con.
I have to make a brief announcement.